Hello there, I'm Eric Peckham, and this is the Monetizing Media podcast. As with my Monetizing Media newsletter, my goal is to dissect business opportunities across the media, entertainment, and gaming sector. I'm joined by a leading entrepreneur, executive, or investor in each episode as we dig into a case study on their company, an investment thesis they have, or other tactical insights on business models, pricing, and creating loyal fans. I'm very excited to share today's conversation with you. For as long as I can remember, I've been fascinated by the real-life stories of different people and historic events. Nonfiction books and documentary films have been a home for my brain, often inspiring me and speaking to me even more so than fictional stories. In the past, I've been dismayed that despite their cultural impact, documentaries were almost always a labor of love, with little to no financial reward for the creators and investors in them. That has changed very quickly. As some of the most popular content on streaming services like Netflix and Hulu, documentary films have rapidly become a lucrative business. Producers and their investors can earn millions by crafting a documentary that inspires people to take action on a critical political or cultural issue. There's an exciting alignment of financial incentive and social impact. Few entrepreneurs are seizing the moment better than Bryn Mooser. Bryn was a humanitarian aid worker and documentary filmmaker who founded the virtual reality studio Riot in 2012 to share news and stories in the VR format. He sold Riot to Verizon in 2016 and left in December 2018 to launch XTR, a Los Angeles-based production company focused on documentary films and other nonfiction series. XTR has been aggressively financing a large slate of nonfiction films and TV shows, and has a number of big-name investors behind it, including Thrive Capital's Josh Kushner, Airbnb co-founder Joe Gebbia, former AOL CEO Tim Armstrong, and iconic Hollywood producer Norman Lear. So, Bryn, I'm excited to talk to you here and dig into more of what you guys are building at XTR. I think the most interesting place to start to set the context, though, would be maybe you explain to us a little bit about how documentary filmmaking as a business has worked kind of up to this point in the more recent boom.
Yeah, well, I mean, first, I'm just really excited to be having this conversation with you. I'm very passionate about what's happening in the documentary industry, so any chance to discuss it and talk about it is a good day for me. Look, I think that there's this radical kind of revolutionary moment that's happening in documentary films right now. Before this moment, and I'll say this moment is the last, let's say 5 years, as streaming platforms have started to give distribution to documentaries, it was just really hard to be able to watch a documentary. You had to go to an art house movie theater, or the corner of a video rental house, or maybe the teacher wheels in a TV and VCR and shows you a documentary. Now you turn on Netflix and there's a documentary on the trending section right next to Avengers Endgame. That's a radical moment that I don't think enough people in the industry have stopped and gone, wow, this is now a moment where, distribution has been equalized with some of the biggest blockbuster films to documentaries. That's really exciting.
I'm curious, has, aside from just the distribution, has something else changed in all of a sudden documentaries becoming so much more highly valued by kind of the distribution platforms?
I think this moment is sort of a perfect storm of a couple things that have happened, right? One is this, distribution moment through the streaming platforms. And the other one is that you're getting a generation that has grown up on reality television and YouTube, and so, nonfiction and fiction, the line is blurred. It's not like, when I was growing up, a documentary was like something you would see in a classroom. Now there's a generation that's grown up and they see reality TV, they see YouTube, they see traditional television, and it all sort of looks the same. And so I think that it's just audiences are more sophisticated. So that's one part. And then the other part is that, and I think this is across the board for a lot of creators, technology has just enabled the high quality cameras to get in the hands of creators, right? And so, again, for the first time, you have people who are able to tell their own stories or create documentaries from what's happening around them using tools that they can afford. So to give an example, 10, 15 years ago, if you wanted to make a high quality documentary, it was really expensive. It was expensive to find a 16 millimeter camera or a 3-chip camera at that point. And now, you've got a 4K camera on your iPhone, and you're able to get that out, whether it's, traditional broadcast or streaming, or also online. I mean, I think if we take this current moment we're in, these protests that are happening around George Floyd were enabled because one brave girl, Daniela Frazier, turned her iPhone on and made 10 minutes. That's probably the most powerful documentary that this generation has ever seen. You know, it's just an entirely new moment where people like Daniela Frazier can become filmmakers and can change the world through their films.
Was there a specific documentary that you look at as the tipping point of this whole boom of the last 5 years or so?
Well, I think that last year was a really big year for documentaries. You had Won't You Be My Neighbor, you had Free Solo, you had the Michael Jackson Leaving Neverland, R. Kelly, and then Netflix brought a lot of really powerful nonfiction television, from Making a Murderer to The Keeper. And so I think that it's really been kind of these type of stories that have truly captured the imagination. I mean, when you think about the things that we talk about with our friends or our family the next day, from an entertainment perspective, you know, a lot of the time it's nonfiction. You know, it's a nonfiction podcast story like Serial that you heard, or it's Making a Murderer, or it's R. Kelly or Michael Jackson. Like, we're far more likely to talk about you know, Tiger King on Netflix than the latest season of Ozark. You know, like, that's pretty crazy. Certainly when you think about how much more expensive and difficult Ozark is to make than, you know, Tiger King is to make. And so I think that, you know, we saw a big year with documentaries in the last 2 years. Then, you know, something extraordinary happened with lockdown, which is that the things that people watched in lockdown was The Last Dance, Tiger King, Beastie Boys story, Jeffrey Epstein. And then the third piece is documentaries are up in production right now. People are still shooting them and making them, and they know how to make them kind of in this new moment that we're in too. So this is a powerful time for the industry.
When did the streaming wars really turn to documentaries, in terms of, you know, Netflix and Hulu and everyone else getting more aggressive and buying them up, bidding more money for them?
Look, I think that certainly when we saw the growth of documentary series on these platforms, you know, whether it's Finding Neverland on HBO or whether it's Making a Murderer on Netflix, I think that the more and more that these films started to trend and people talked about them, it really became a powerful part of the strategy for these. I mean, look, HBO arguably created the modern short documentary industry as we know it. I was nominated for my first Academy Award with HBO for a film we made called Body Team 12. So, you know, they are the pioneers in this space. But certainly everybody paid attention to how successful they did, and they jumped on. And so, you know, when Sheila Nevins and HBO were getting time after time nominated for Best Short Documentary, everybody else paid attention. And now you see Nat Geo is in there. You see Netflix every year picking up the Oscar. So it's definitely, you know, changing a lot, and there's a lot of new voices on there. And as far as I'm concerned, that's a really exciting moment. You know, I think for the first time ever, there's a real business in documentaries. You know, it's not like you make a film, it takes you 10 years to make it. You hope it gets in a couple theaters and goes to Sundance. Now you can make a film, turn it around quickly, and there's more platforms than ever that are buying this. And I think that's just going to keep growing. It's really the beginning.
Yeah, there are a number of big names in the tech world who invested behind you to get XTR off the ground, like Josh Kushner, yeah, Tim Armstrong, Joe Gebbia. Can you outline for us a little bit how the financing works for documentaries? As far as, do you operate out of like a 5-year fund that you raise? What's it look like from an investor perspective?
When I was at my last company was called Riot, which I sold to Verizon and spent 3 years helping to build out Verizon Media. When it was time to leave my company there and Verizon, to me, when I surveyed the landscape, I've been making documentaries for a long time. I love them. I just saw this huge boom that was happening, right? Some people call it the golden age of documentaries. I think it's just the beginning of this sort of moment. But what was clear was that there is not a leading studio in the space. You know, there's not an A24 or there's not a Neon for documentaries, and just pure documentaries. And so I really thought there was an opportunity to build that. How do we build, a studio that people love, that people, when they see the logo, they get excited about, that feels cultural, and is a way to kind of capture this moment that's happening. And so I went to friends of mine who are passionate about documentaries and passionate about media, but also investors, raised money to start the company. And those investors put money into the company almost like it was a media startup. But we have two vehicles at XTR to get people to invest in our films. One is called XTR Fast Forward, and that's an equity fund where investors who are interested in documentary to make a return on can invest through us. We've got a bunch of really big blockbuster documentaries that are coming out that we'll be announcing soon from that fund. And the other one is called XTR Film Society, which is a 501c3 vehicle that we're able to work with philanthropists, people who are passionate about certain topic areas, who want to get involved and help make a documentary. And so they're able to give money through grants through that nonprofit arm. So really that's like the two ways that people can really invest into the films. But we have our main investors who have invested and supported XTR. And then we're always talking to other people who want to get involved in documentary films, either as a great investment or from a philanthropy standpoint.
What are we talking about here in comparing kind of the production costs and then the return on investment or selling price for documentaries 5 years ago versus today?
There's no even comparison. I mean, it's a night and day difference because you have so many new people and so many big buyers. You talk about this all the time here at what this moment is, but just to reiterate it, you have the biggest companies in the universe, Apple, Amazon, Google, Facebook, betting on premium content as a really important part of their business strategy going forward. Like that's amazing, right? And so what that means is that you have the backdrop for streaming wars to happen, and that means that Apple's got a lot of great content. YouTube's got to find their content. Facebook, Quibi, Snap, I'm sure TikTok soon, right? It's like there's a perfect storm of companies that need great content. And there's a lot of great content creators out there, but it means that it's driving up the price for those premium ones. So, to give an example, this year at Sundance, most of the biggest celebrities that people were talking about were there to support documentaries. Taylor Swift was there, Hillary Clinton was there, Kerry Washington was there. They were all supporting documentaries. Ron Howard had a documentary that he directed, right? And then the biggest sale, or one of the biggest sales out of Sundance, was Boys State, which Apple bought for around $13 million. So it was a watershed year, both in terms of like the excitement, the conversation, the talking about, and then in terms of sale prices. And if I had to bet, next year at Sundance, documentaries are going to be front and center because we have had this strange year where production has basically grinded to a halt for indie film, but documentaries have kept going. So this is an accelerant for the industry of what just happened.
Yeah, I saw the Billie Eilish documentary. Looks like it sold to Apple for a $25 million price tag. Some of these prices are quite substantial relative to anything you heard of in the past for a documentary.
Yeah, totally. There was a big sale for the Rihanna documentary. There was of course, big price tags for the Michelle Obama documentary, the Taylor Swift documentary, and then The Last Dance was an expensive documentary to do. But look at what the result of that was. It's like the number one most streamed thing on ESPN, and I think you're going to see a lot more of those type of projects.
From a business standpoint, is the project typically over when a documentary sells to a distributor, or is there a back end that some of these docs are getting, or B, are you starting to see opportunities like you'd have with a very successful film where there are kind of offshoots that come from the fill itself, right? Like you think of franchises where there's merch, there's a game spinoff, there's all these sorts of things.
Yes.
Are you seeing any of that happen?
I think 100%. Two parts about this. One is anything is possible right now coming out of COVID, right? This is like after you kind of get through the painful moment of this, the suffering, the challenges that are going to happen, the other side of this from an entertainment industry perspective is everything flipped upside down, and new rules being written, new leaders emerging, old companies crumbling. I mean, it really is a massive revolution that is coming. And so that means that there is a time to rethink distribution. We're certainly rethinking theatrical. And you're already seeing leaders emerge from that. Like Neon, for instance, is doing some of the most, I think, cutting edge and smart new ways of distribution. For their films, their documentary Spaceship Earth, they partnered with a food delivery service and did a thing where they would send you a free meal when you downloaded the movie at home. You know, it's like a cool, interesting thing. And that's just kind of like some of kind of how people are rethinking this moment. So I think there's, a time that we can really rethink everything that happened before and rebuild it. But then also, like your question about, do you see merch and things like that? I mean, I'll give to Tiger King as a good example. I mean, every single meme, internet joke, text to friends was a Tiger King, Snapchat filter or a funny video. I mean, it got into your culture in a way that I think no television show could do. And now look, they're doing a Tiger King TV show with Nick Cage. And I think that even if you look back at some of the success of the documentaries from a couple years ago, you had Apollo 11. Then you had First Man with Ryan Gosling. You had Won't You Be My Neighbor. Then you had Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood with Tom Hanks. You had RBG. Then you had whatever the RBG narrative film was. So I think that it's really changing, and anything's possible right now. Am I too optimistic about the moment? Am I too excited about it? I think it's pretty radical.
No, I mean, there's certainly data to support your excitement, at least thus far. Are you seeing this tide lifting all boats, so to speak, across the documentary world? Or when we're talking about this boom, are we really talking about specific categories of documentaries in terms of the style or the topic areas?
I think from a production standpoint, you're going to see a lot of legacy companies not surviving this moment. So I think you're going to see a new set of leaders emerge, and an old sort of fall away. And the hope is with those new leaders who emerge, also within that comes a new set of filmmakers, diversity, new voices, people who didn't have a chance before. So that I have a lot of hope for what that disruption from an industry standpoint and a business standpoint means. But I just think that it's going to be a moment that people are really looking at what comes out post COVID. Like what happens when people can really get back to work, and who has kind of weathered this storm. But I'm hopeful that the other side sees kind of a new crop of filmmakers and voices that are going to bring great stories to the screen. And then in terms of topics, I think that sports is very rich. Music is going to be a big category going forward, especially as the time we spend driving in our cars and listening to the radio changes. And live music opportunities change. So I would think look to that. But also almost every category can kind of be richly mined for true stories.
To end with that, what are the big upcoming stories that we'll be able to expect from XTR?
Well, we have a documentary that we've just partnered with Neon on, and that's Neon's new label, Super LTD, which is coming out soon. We're about to announce when it is. It's called You Cannot Kill David Arquette, and it's about David Arquette's wrestling career. We were at Sundance with a couple films that we were really proud to be able to support. One is called Empty Pockets, Bloody Nose. The other one is called Mucho More, which is coming to Netflix soon. A film called The Fight about the ACLU, and a film about the March for Our Lives kids called Us Kids. So those are projects from ours to look out for. And then we'll be announcing a bunch of kind of big blockbuster docs, hopefully in the middle of the summer.
Excited to see them.
We could have a virtual screening. I'll send you a meal.
Well, Bryn, thanks so much for taking the time to chat.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks for listening to the Monetizing Media podcast. To keep learning more tactical insights on the media, entertainment, and gaming industry, subscribe to my Monetizing Media newsletter at monetizingmedia.com.